We're really looking forward to hearing our first and our keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming Maude Barlow.
Well, thank you very, very much for your gorgeous introduction and welcome, and thank you all for having me in this gorgeous place. Not that I prepare myself in any way, but I once read that after a particularly moving introduction, Winston Churchill said he could hardly wait to hear what he had to say. A good introduction should come after. I'm going to start off with just some headlines from around the world, just from the last month, okay? I want to give us a flavor of what we're dealing with here. Israel faces worst water crisis in 80 years. Catastrophic water crisis hits Iraq. The worst drought in half a century has pushed Argentina to historic water crisis. Jordan braces for historic drought. Nevada has been declared a natural disaster area because of severe drought. California is facing the worst drought in modern history. And just coming out of the World Economic Summit in Davos last month, the major statement coming out of there was that the world is headed toward, and I quote, water bankruptcy. I'm going to tell you that I think we are dealing here with the greatest ecological and human threat of our time. And you could say, well, are you competing with climate change? And I would say, no, in fact, I think that the water crisis is the first and most horrible and unreal face of climate change. And in fact, I believe that our displacement and abuse of water is part of the story, not just a result of greenhouse gas-induced climate change, but actually is part of the cause of it. And we haven't understood it nearly enough, and we need to do that. I was taken by the story of thinking that you sat here on Lake Superior, the equivalent of Lake Superior. I come from a country where we live with what I call the myth of abundance. Oh, we've got so much water, we can do whatever we want. Well, frankly, most of us grew up that way, no matter where we are in the world. Back in grade 6 or whatever, we learned that there's a finite hydrologic cycle that goes round and round and round. You can use and abuse as much water as you want. And so what's happening is that we're displacing water massively and quickly from where it's needed for not only healthy ecosystems and for growing food for landscapes, but also for a healthy hydrologic cycle to function. And as well, of course, when we take down forests and trees, we now have quantified that we actually remove rainfall from land as well. So I want to put this as strongly as I can this morning, that we have polluted, mismanaged, and displaced water in our world as if there were no tomorrow, as if there is so much water, we can do whatever we want with it. And that has got to stop. It has got to stop, and it's got to stop really, really soon. That's the first sort of big statement I want to make this morning. So what is the solution? I've worked on this for a long time now, and I've struggled through. I don't think there's any easy answer here, but let me tell you what I believe first. And that is, we are going to come to what I'm talking about here by design or default. We're either going to do it thoughtfully, ahead of time, anticipating the water crisis that's coming, or we're going to do it after the crisis. In Australia now, they are literally charging, in Perth, they're going to charge you per flush. That's how much the crisis has hit. Unlimited growth, as one American environmentalist said, has the same DNA as the cancer cell. You know, it has to turn on its host in order to survive. We can't take any more fish out of the sea at the same rate that we're doing, and we can't cut down the forests, and we can't take the minerals, and we can't destroy the water, and we can't pollute the air, and we can't use the rest of the fossil fuels because we depend on it. Every single thing, from the desk to the water to the glass to the paper to the plastic to everything in here comes from nature. And there's a friend of mine who was greening the deserts of Rajasthan, and they call him the Rain Man, Rajendra Singh, with water harvesting. As he says, we have taken from, he calls it the nature,